Hello everyone and welcome to the next episode of Outside of Life, where it's all about how you can turn your creative passion into a profession. My name is Eva and my guest today is a character designer and animation art director originally from Ontario, now living and working in Vancouver, Canada. His father, a fine artist, introduced him to art, and since early childhood he knew he wanted to have a career only in art. He studied tradigital animation, a combination of traditional and CGI animation. But his dream and goal was always to become a character designer. He built his portfolio with this goal in mind and got jobs in several studios. He's currently refocusing his life on his new project of living more flexible lifestyle under the motto Live, Live, Draw. And he's documenting his journey on his YouTube channel with the same name. So please welcome Matt Boismier, also known online as Tooninator. But before we get to the interview, I just want to apologize for a connection glitch that caused that the recording is not 100% clear, especially in the last 5 minutes of the interview. But now, let's just jump to the interview. So welcome everyone to the next episode of Outside of Life, and I'm super happy to have Matt here. Hi, how are you?
How's it going? I'm great.
Good. And let's start with your background, and you can share some of your stories, how you were creative for the first time when you were a kid, or which were kind of the creative outlets.
Oh, goodness. It started when I was about 2 years old. My dad was an artist, so I grew up watching him. He's a fine artist. And so, yeah, I was fascinated. I couldn't believe that someone could just come up with an idea and execute it. So definitely got my imagination going. And from the earliest days I remember, I was always creative and drawing. And then it was about grade 3 when my dad bought me like a fancy sketchbook, not just like rough paper. I had a good sketchbook, and he bought me nice color pencils, and he bought me a nice sketchbook, and he put a banana on the table and said, draw it. And so I did my first still life. I think it was grade 3. So I don't know how old you are there, and it's pretty young. And after that, it looked like a banana, and he framed it and he put a mat on it. And I thought, I'm an artist. That's it. So from then on, it was just very like linear trajectory. I knew that I was going to be an artist. It's what I did every day, and I just kind of thought I was an artist or a designer or whatever. But I always loved cartoons, so everything I drew was cartoony in some way or another.
And what was the best lesson your father taught you?
To be honest, it wasn't what he told me. It was that he didn't tell me. I would just watch him, and he used a bunch of different mediums, airbrush and pastels and watercolor pencils. But it was that he didn't try to make me do anything. He actually just allowed me to create. So I think it was more what he didn't do. And I don't think I think if I had kids right now, I don't think I would have that same restraint. I think I'd be like, good, practice your craft.
Yeah, definitely. Because if you have kids and when you are artists, then you can teach them right away. And yeah, that's perfect. And do you remember like the first conversation or like these discussions when you decided you want to take this professionally?
It was never really a question. I don't know. I watched cartoons and I just thought that's all I want to do. There was never any other idea in mind. Honestly, it was not between one thing or another. It was just one direction. And the only difference was I made that decision to go into animation. So post-secondary school, I did a 3-year program in animation. I learned tradigital. The program was called tradigital animation. So we learned traditional and CG animation over 3 years. So that was my post-secondary training. But it was pretty. There was never a if about it. It was when.
And what were kind of like the biggest decisions you had to do in order to get where you are now?
So even though I knew I wanted to to work in animation, and Disney was the goal. It was a winding path that got me there, because I spent about 8 years bartending.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been very social, so I always worked different jobs. Ever since I was 12 years old, I paid my own way. I bought my own car, paid for my school. So I always worked really hard, but those jobs had nothing to do with art. I worked in a grocery store. I worked in the service industry. And I enjoyed people a lot. So bartending was the perfect combination where I could make a lot of money and I could socialize. So I did that for many years. And after I graduated, I moved away from home and I worked at a Hard Rock Cafe. And I continued doing that. And I always had a freelance artistic career. So people would hire me to do portraits or, whatever the case. I illustrated some kids' books, did that kind of stuff, but never full time in a studio. And then I decided I wasn't going to work in service anymore, and I went and worked at a theme park. Mm-hmm. So basically roller coasters, all that kind of stuff, but I was the caricature artist. And I did that for a summer, and that sent me in a direction, because I love drawing people, always did. And so that sent me in the direction of falling into the International Society of Caricature Artists, which is known as ISCA. Okay. And they have conventions every year. So that year I was part of it. I went to a big convention in Ohio, in the US. I ended up winning an award for best digital style, because at that time people were drawing by hand. They weren't, doing as much digital painting. And then that kind of propelled things a little bit. And then I started working in Facebook games, and I art directed a few Facebook games. And then to your point, the big decision I had to make, I was in a relationship, and we weren't sure, I was waiting for her to finish school, and we had talked about things, and I needed to get to a big city where I could flourish in animation. And we were living in Windsor, Ontario, which is where I'm from. And the decision was to follow her to her hometown, to Niagara Falls, or to separate and me chase my career. Very tough decision, but I knew I had to chase that career. I wouldn't have, there would have been some resentment. Who knows what would have happened if I didn't do that. And it's the only thing I ever wanted in my life. So it was pretty straightforward. And after 5 years, we decided to go our own way. Mm-hmm. And I came to Vancouver, and it was the perfect decision. Within a year, all sorts of good things were happening.
So
that was the hard decision.
Fell into place when okay, cool.
And at this point, I was 27. I wasn't 21. I had waited a long time. I was doing all sorts. I did product design. I did some fashion. Designing for a motorcycle apparel company. I did every type of job under the sun. But now I went down to CTN Expo in California, and I showed my work to Disney and Sony and all those studios, and I got a really good response. So that's when I went back to Ontario, and I applied to every studio in North America and hoped for the best. So.
And what happened afterwards?
So I got a job offer from Digital Domain in Florida, which is no longer. And I got a job offer from Nerdcore Entertainment in Vancouver. And they were doing some really cool stuff. I had been to the studio before. They had this really cool 2D, 3D look, and I loved it. So I took that job, moved across the country, only had 2 weeks to do it. Sold everything I owned, took 2 suitcases, and moved across the country to the West Coast, where I currently live now.
Oh, perfect. And so this was CTN last year, right? Like 2016? Or before?
No, this was 2011.
Ah, okay.
Yes. So now I have been... So 2011, that would have been, I think, November. And I showed my work to all the studios. It was my first time really... meeting with these studios. And then, so that was November. By January, I was moving to work for a studio. So Disney really energized me. There was an artist named Bill Schwab. He's the character designer there. He looked through my portfolio. They asked me to stick around longer. He flipped through my portfolio, was pretty impressed, gave me some input, and then I just went with that and got home and applied.
Super nice. And what about the portfolio? Can you give some tips for starting artists if they are planning to go to CTN, and like how did you prepare?
Yeah, so at this time, iPad was pretty new, and I had just got an iPad. I actually won it, totally random. And so I had this iPad, and I'm like, what am I going to do with this? But I knew my artwork looked really good on it. So I put my portfolio as a digital portfolio. Mm-hmm. And so when everybody was walking up, showing their work, they were flipping through pages, people were swiping on my iPad. But that was in 2011. Times are changed. I think everyone does that now. That didn't matter though. It's the artwork, and you have to focus. And I think what took me so long, I really wanted to be a character designer. That was once I graduated from school, I learned how to animate and do all that. I went, no, the thing I love to do is draw. So I'm going to, there was no chance I was going to go into a studio to do anything else. I wanted to come in as a designer. I didn't want to be a junior, I don't know, coffee getter or anything like that. I thought, I'm not going into the studio unless I can do character design. And so that took me quite a few years. And the problem was that I was being pulled in a lot of different directions because I was freelancing. So I was chasing paychecks. And so I was being pulled in so many different directions, and I would do anything that someone would pay me for. So if you wanted a portrait, I would do a portrait. If you wanted a children's book illustration, I would do that. If you needed something sculpted, I would do everything, but I had no focus. And so when I finally got the chance to do this, I took a job working, making Facebook games, and it didn't require a lot of character design at all. We were making slot machine games, and all that meant was that I was creating the look of these machines and drawing all sorts of little objects and whatever. But I used that time, I was pretty quick at creating artwork, and I used that job to actually build a character portfolio. Mm-hmm. So every time they asked me to create something, I would go above and beyond because I knew I was getting paid to basically make a portfolio. So it took me about 1 year. And then when I went down to CTV, I had this collection of visual development I had done for a bunch of different games, and they were looking for mascots and random stuff like that. But I went over and above. I'm like, I'll do expression sheets. I'll do all of it. And so, yeah, I went down and I had a very focused portfolio. It showed that I could do a lot of things. I had, pen portraits in there, cross hatching. So they knew I could draw realistically. And that I could construct a face, but then I had very stylistic drawings, and it was clear that I could follow a theme as well, like a design theme. And I think that's a very important part is you have to create the portfolio for the job you want. Yeah. And it's tough to do when you come out of school and you've learned everything. So you've got a little bit of, maybe you learned 3D and you want to include a model you did, but that model is kind of, you're not specializing in that. So that's kind of like mediocre. And then you've done a little bit of character design because you had to make your own short film, but that's not your specialty. So it's a little, everything kind of falls in this in-between land. And I think what happens is nobody can place you. So now in my career, I am the guy who hires, I'm an art director, so I get to choose my teams that I get to work with. And I can tell you from page one if I'm going to hire you or not. I don't waste time going all the way to the end because I know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a confidence in your line and that what you want to do and that, you've got something to say with your artwork. So I think being very focused and creating a portfolio, even if you have to create two different portfolios, one, maybe shows that you can animate and you want to, you put together a demo reel. But then if you come apply it to a studio and you want to do character design, that portfolio really has to show that. Otherwise, what could happen is you could get placed in an area that you don't want to, and you might be willing to take that job, but then that steers you in the wrong direction. So, Yeah, I think it's being true to what you want to do and what drives you and sticking to it. Yeah, and staying on course, I guess.
Oh, perfect.
But
Yes.
yeah,
So kind of like putting a goal, so you decide first what you want to do, like you knew that you want to be a character designer or basically whatever you want, because also if you don't want to work for a studio, then you can do more different things and like
yeah,
sell your art prints or whatever.
yeah,
So, okay. And
yeah.
what about your inspiration? What are you mostly inspired by? Or do you have something strange which inspires you?
Inspiration. I love passionate people. I love, and I don't, so I grew up in a small town where art wasn't, it's not like I had a bunch of artist friends. It was myself. By the time I was in high school, my dad wasn't creating any fine artwork anymore. So I didn't have an artistic culture. All of my family is very blue collar. They worked, on cars and houses and all that kind of stuff. So my inspiration kind of comes from all the different realms. I don't stay within the art community. I'm very athletic and driven by sports and getting outside and adventuring and just social life kind of stuff, but it's not really to do with art. And I just love seeing people with a real passion for what they do, and that could be anything. And I've always said that if it's worth doing, it's worth doing well. So even if you wanted to work at McDonald's and fair enough. And if you told me that you were the best fry cooker, I couldn't argue with you. I'd be like, well, you clearly have tried so hard to be really good at what you do, and you've got a passion for it. So I can respect that. If you're like, oh, I'm working at McDonald's and don't have any goals, or, that's when I'm like, well, you gotta focus on something. So yeah, I get really inspired by anyone who's just really, really exceptionally good at what they do. And I want to pick their brain and I want to expand my my environment. I want to know more than just, how to be a good artist. I want to all sorts of stuff. So yeah, like
So,
when I bartended, I learned how to do flair and all like the juggling of the bottles. And I was like, if I'm going to bartend, I'm going to be the best bartender I can be. So
now I can imagine you like flopping around the bottles. But cool. But that's a really good idea to just, network in a different areas. Like either it's like sport or just whatever it is, because then you can bring your stories to your artworks and just have a different contact as well, like networking,
yeah.
right?
And it's actually amazing how many opportunities I've gotten because I don't stick within the art community. It almost opens up a whole new realm where, people might not have access to a ton of artists. And so they know me and they know that I create, and it's actually led to so many wonderful things, even if that's just a new thought that I, never had before by meeting someone new. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And what sports do you like to be kind of like creative
Uh,
outside?
yeah, it's not even about being creative, but yeah, beach volleyball is my life. I live on the West Coast. We have beaches. I was playing last night, and I do that about 3 to 4 times a week. And then I used to race mountain bikes. I played baseball for about 15 years. I snowboard. I surf. I bought a skateboard. I don't know.
Just to be
So
cool.
yeah, no,
No, I'm kidding. But yeah,
but
but it's really cool to have beach and just sun, and then you have vitamin D, and then you are just
yeah,
like resting from the other things you have to do. So yeah.
yeah. It kind of makes it hard. I think I would artist. Well, maybe, but I spend so much time not doing art. Now that I've kind of been established in the career a little bit, like have to push so hard when I was a student. So much of my time now doing other things because all day, 9 hours a day, I'm in a studio and I'm managing a team and, bringing other people's visions to life. And I just, I need the sports to kind of recharge me.
And do you still create your own artworks, like after work and school? I mean, sport, and just in the evening or something?
Yeah. So I was really proud of myself for about 5 years working in the studio. I had so much energy. And I maybe I had just a little bit less responsibility, but every lunch break I was making artwork. And if you go through my portfolio or my Instagram, you can see that I used to be very proficient, and none of what I posted was ever from, the projects I worked on, because I couldn't show that. So it was all stuff I would do on my lunch break between projects. And it's starting to slow down a little bit. I think I'm refocusing, and I want to be creative, but maybe not in a drawing way just at this moment. And then it's kind of weird for me because it's not something that's going to go away, but I think I'm refocusing.
So what would be then your new focus in the future? Do you know already?
I have some ideas, yeah. So I hope to not work full-time in a studio. Or if I do, I want to work in, I think, smaller studios that I can get to touch more parts of the project. Right now I've worked for very large studios, with 400, 800 people. So your role is very...
You're in a box.
You're in a box. You do your job and there's someone else who does the next job. And so I think I would prefer to either go smaller or just to kind of do visual development on my own. But when I do this, I think the next creative thing I want to do is to get back to filmmaking, and possibly some YouTube content. I'm really leaning towards that. So I'm getting familiar with having a camera around me a lot more. And I'm starting to get back to editing videos and trying to tell stories in any way I can. And I there's a lot I want to tell, the industry and students I get talked to, or I get a lot of interviews requested by students who are in school. And that's given me a lot of insight into what I can help people with. And so I just need to find what that's going to be. There's a lot of people creating YouTube content in different capacities. There's how I did it. There's the tutorials. There's the all sorts. There's the how do you get into the industry. But I think I have an area that I want to focus on that's a little bit less direct focus on the industry and more the lifestyle. That's something I'm super excited about, and I have a few more months left in a studio, and I'm getting really, really amped. So I'm practicing,
so that's actually really soon. Wow.
Yeah, by the new year. So is late September. So sometime by the new year, I hope to be doing some really fun things and getting back to social media. Instagram has kind of fallen off for me. They changed their algorithms. I'm not getting the same reach that I used to have, and I have to shift my thinking because I was so hesitant. I don't want it to be inorganic. Like I don't want to have to tell people to follow me. I don't want to have to, do giveaways just to kind of get these followers. I want them to genuinely be interested in what I'm doing. And that's a hard realization because now Instagram is all about the monetization, and, you might have to pay for subscribers. And I did so well. I've been posting my art since 2002 consistently, when it used to be just forums. And that's how I got in, I know I was never trained in character design. I got good because I got to interact with all these people. And then how many years now? It's been 15 years of posting my art online. And I got to a point where I had 13,000 followers on Instagram. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I could see that continuous growth. And in the last year, it stopped. Nothing has changed in a whole year for me. So I think Instagram really changed how they did things, and it's hit me pretty hard. And I got to figure out how to get back into the social media realm. So
yeah, definitely, because they are changing like all the time. So it's kind of, we just have to be like flexible or adaptable. So if you kind of something worked last year or even last 2 months, maybe it doesn't work anymore. So
exactly.
So it works a bit more maybe like Facebook, or maybe it's a live videos. You have to do more live videos. So, you know, you will be
I
like
know.
snowboarding, surfing, drawing at the same time, and people will watch that.
Yeah, I hope so. It's definitely close to what I hope to do. Yeah, I just want to have a lot of fun, and I want to build a lifestyle around that. And I've worked pretty hard to get where I am in this industry, and so I hope it can lead to good things.
Yeah, and so when you have a different project you want to work on, or like in the future, how do you say no to projects right now, or what is going on in your head when you have to decide what to do and what not to do?
So let's back up a few years ago. I never said no to anything. All I wanted to do was keep working, keep getting paid, keep making new contacts. So I never said no, and I burnt out. You know, working full time, taking on all these side projects, and you're just so eager because you want to build your name. So I never said no. But now, fast forward, I say no to a lot of things because there's more to life than money, and there's more to life than all of this art. And so I like to have a good balance. And so what happens is I typically say yes to really fun development gigs, stuff where people come to me because they love what I do and they let me explore. So that's definitely something I say yes to. I've said no to a bunch of jobs that would require me to be a bit more in management. And that's what I'm moving away from now, because last year I got to work on my first feature film, and that was the My Little Pony feature that was coming in October. I was the character supervisor, and I actually didn't get to create any artwork for that entire film. And it's the biggest project I've ever worked on, but I had 15 artists that I was, managing. And that's when I realized I need to step away. I need to, I can't take these projects just because, it might be a big name or anything like that. Because at the end of the day, I need to create. And so I'm becoming more selective now.
Yeah, definitely. It makes sense. I had the same experience because I started as a character designer, then I did concept art, and when you start to do branding and art direction, then you don't create anything anymore. So, yeah. But, and what are your favorite tools or mediums you use? Is it Photoshop and you use a tablet?
Yeah, I use Photoshop. It's the only program I've used for, oh goodness, how many years? 15 years. For a while when I was doing Facebook games, I used Flash. I've used Illustrator a little bit. But the only thing I choose to use is Photoshop. Last year I went traveling for 3 months, and I was doing a little bit of work while I traveled, and I bought the iPad Pro, and then the Apple Pencil. And I use Procreate, but that's just for convenience. But
do you like it? Because some artists or creators are oh yeah, iPad Pro, or you can have a Cintiq Companion or other tools.
Yeah, I went with this because of the price point. It was just a bit cheaper, and I told my clients I would only do rough sketches and stuff like that. I wasn't going to do anything that was super complex. And I could just sit in a hammock. It was really easy to travel with. So yeah, I'd be in Central America, and I had my iPad, and I would just doodle. It's good. It's got some really cool tricks, the fact that you can lay the pencil on its side and, sketch with the side of a pencil. That's kind of cool. But again, it's just a tool. If I had it my way, I would just work in watercolor. I love drawing on paper and all that kind of stuff, but professionally I just use Photoshop.
Yeah. And do you have a favorite brand of watercolor as well? These are my paints.
Yeah. So I asked you props. I just happen to have my watercolor stuff sitting next to me. So this Winsor Newton, the travel. Oh, let's see. Just the travel kit. I'm out of some of the colors. I've used it so much. I love it. And then I carry around I keep everything really tiny, and I just have all my tools.
Oh, nice.
And I have
You are
a
really organized.
no, not at all,
It
not at
looks like
all.
it.
So everything is super tiny. I don't work really big. So like that's the size of the watercolor. That's the size of my sketchbook. And then when I travel, I just do these little. What can I show you? I just do these little
Oh, nice.
watercolors when I travel. So that's about it.
Do you write also where it was and some kind of story of the place?
Yeah.
Oh, really cool.
So yeah, I usually just I don't put too much information because I tend to remember, but yeah, it's like my little journal. So if I had it my way, I would just travel and do little watercolor paintings or cafes sketching of people.
Do you prefer more to sketch people or the locations?
People is what I did for the most years, and it's where I get my inspiration. I love people and I love people watching. But lately, because I really love watercolor. I don't know why I don't have total control over it, and that's kind of cool. But so with my watercolors, I'm doing environments just because I spent so many years doing characters, and when I do art direction, I love lighting and painting. But I'm also trying to learn, so I just love that I get to learn really quickly because I haven't done environments as much as I've done characters. So yeah, learning lighting and just studying from what's in front of me.
And do you have like favorite books you can recommend to learn from or something you would give as a gift to people?
So light and no, what is it? Light and Color, I think it's called. James Gurney's book.
Yeah.
Fantastic and super easy to read. I've never seen so much content about lighting and painting light expressed in such a way that it doesn't get too sciencey. So I definitely really love that one. But I don't tend to. I just look at things. That's as much as I can. I just try to sit in nature and observe things. So, everyone always wants that one resource that can really set you in the right direction, and you just have to put the mileage in. You have to really you can do the same thing over and over again and never get better. You have to, perfect practice makes perfect, not practice. So you have to go in trying something new and trying to understand what you see, even if it's a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, because sometimes it can be overwhelming when you're just starting and you don't know what to start with, and that's why I think people want this one book at least. Okay, now I can start with color and light, then I can do perspective, or just step by step.
But with the books and you're trying to digest all this information before you're capable of understanding it. That's where it's a bit tricky, because you can read that book, you can read it over and over, but if you haven't put in enough pencil mileage, you haven't got the fundamentals to really embrace it. And this has happened to me over my whole career, where I read something 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, and I'm like, oh, okay. And then I'll be painting a picture, not thinking anything about that. And all of a sudden, because I'm observing nature or reality, it'll just click because I wasn't ready to understand it before. And then, the knowledge is in there somewhere. And then all of a sudden you have that aha moment. It's wonderful.
And how do you kind of approach learning? If you feel like, okay, I'm really strong with characters, do you want to be even better in characters, or you are trying to balance it out? Okay, now I need to learn more about landscape and then just build everything at the same time.
Well, yeah, that's definitely a good question. That's something I'm actually changing right now in my life in general, not to do with art, because the whole master your craft thing to me for so many years. And that's what I spent about 30 years of my life doing. Every time it'd be I could do this thing that I'm mediocre at, or I could spend that time to get even better at my art. I always chose my art. And now I've had successes. I'm a little bit bored. And now I'm thinking, okay, now it's time to learn that's why I bought a skateboard, because I've never skateboarded in my life. And So, I want to take different classes now and just learn new things so I become more interesting. But when it comes to the art, you first have to master something. I think that's a really good place to start. So get really good at something. Be a specialist in one thing, and then branch out. So, I got in as a character artist. I had my focus. That's the only thing I ever had to actually do. And I could have kept going with that. But then my career was leading me into art direction, where I actually had to lead a whole CG team in how to light a bedroom or a cave or whatever the case may be. And so and as an art director, and I was working in television, I always felt like I had to be the best artist on the team. Mm-hmm. If I wasn't, then what am I doing in that position? It wasn't until a bit later that I realized, no, you can actually you can be a good art director without knowing how to do it physically yourself. Yeah. But I took that very seriously, and I that's why I started just doing studies on how to paint light. I started bringing models into my, each week I'd bring a model in and I'd do paintings of them with like crazy lighting. I'd have, one light here, and just trying to learn as fast as I humanly could. So I say master one thing and then branch out.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah, because also, like, as you said, like in a team, you don't have to be the best one there, because that's why you hire new people, because everyone is best at something, right?
Yeah. And I think that's something that, I think that was a confidence issue when I first got into the industry. I thought if I wasn't, I would try to get there. And now I'm a bit more wiser. And so I understand that I can actually just delegate. I can hire a really good team and I can say, hey, figure this out, or I have this idea, can you execute it? So and that's something that came with age.
And can you share maybe also a worst career moment or like a difficult time, and what you learned from it?
Yep. So I worked for a studio for 5 years. They were wonderful to me, and I had opportunity after opportunity just to succeed and really just do what I do best. And then I hit all of my career goals, essentially, that I thought I wanted. And I hit those really rapidly. And I hit it so fast that I never really sat and appreciated it. And then for 2 years, I was just kind of coasting. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what I wanted. I wasn't happy in the roles I was in, but I had no idea where I was going. Just nothing else to shoot for. I had hit all my goals, aside from going down to California and working for Disney. But in 2012, I met with Disney, and I knew that they liked my work. This was about 6 months after CTN. I met with Disney again, and they said, yeah, we love your work. But it was a matter of visas and all this stuff, so I didn't go down there. So I already had that validation. I was doing my career in Vancouver. And so for 2 years, I was just coasting, and I was miserable. I went from being the happiest human ever my whole life to just being lost. And I was agitated, and I was irritable, and it was totally out of character. And my studio, I kept telling them I was going to leave, that I wasn't fulfilled anymore, and I was just going to find something new. And each time I did that, they offered me another really good project. Super awesome of them. And then I would say yes, and then I would immediately regret it, because I knew in my heart I needed to leave. I needed to change things up. And then I did it again, and I told them, hey, after this project, I think I'm going to, kind of carry on. And someone got word of that at the studio, and I got the phone call from HR, and they said, hey, what can we do to keep you? And so they put me on a feature film. And I was like, holy cow, that's the only thing I haven't done was a feature film. And I went and worked on it. And I mentioned before, that was more of a management position. So even though biggest project, I couldn't do it anymore. So as soon as that project was ending, I decided that's it. I'm going to take a break. Something is going to change. And so that was the worst time. but which led to now. So I left the studio. I booked a trip to Central America, and I was going to go surf. And I ended up going for 3 months, surfing every day, doing whatever I wanted to. I did a little bit of work for the studios that I used to work for, because they needed me to do a few things, and it was fantastic. And I took a really long break. I took about 9 months of just not working too hard, doing a little bit of freelance. And then now I think it's been 3 months now I've been back in a studio. I'm working on a show called Octonauts in studio, and that's a 6-month contract. So it led to good things. I'm happy again. I'm inspired again. I just had to shake up my career. So that was my worst time.
Oh, wow. Yeah. But then, now you know what you want, so you try and you can explore. And I have another question, which is even more like for me, because as you are social, how do you kind of approach this, when you will work on your own, because as I quit last year, my full-time job, and then it was like, okay, you are in the studio every day with people. So what are you planning to do with that?
Well, I don't plan. Okay, so I'm social, and I always have things going on. I've got, my great friend that I play volleyball with, I go on trips with, we do all sorts of stuff. So that's not a problem. And I don't plan on having a regular schedule. And I don't plan on sitting in my house for 10 hours a day. I'm not leaving the studio to sit and be sedentary. I'm leaving to build a lifestyle that suits me better. And that means it's going to be social. I also work very quickly. So I do find working in a studio keeps me there longer than I need to be. And, I find myself sitting on Facebook and Instagram while I'm at work. I would rather be out of the studio, but the studio just requires that you're there. Yeah. So on about the social thing, I plan on being social. I plan on having a better lifestyle. Just, a free, if I have to work, here and there, 12 hours a day, I'm capable of that. I've got Netflix. It's all good.
So there are some sounds.
Yeah. But what I realized, I always thought I wanted to be in a studio because I came from a small town where there was no other artists. And I thought there would be nothing cooler than working with others. And that was good for a little while, but I actually find I get very frustrated and I have very high expectations. And, if people don't perform the way I expect, I can become very frustrated. So, and then because I'm in management, I find that I separate myself from the teams sometimes just so that I can do a really good job. Like, I'm very friendly. I don't necessarily socialize with the team. I don't know. Like I feel like I do so many things outside of art that I don't need to, I don't go to artist meetups. I've only been to CTN that one time. It's a very, I feel guilty every year when it comes around, because I'm like, I should go. I want to be involved, but I just find myself doing other things. So I feel a little isolated sometimes, but
you should go to CTN.
I know.
Just because I'm going this year, that's why I'm saying.
And maybe I can start to do that because I'll be a little less occupied. I'll be a little less stressed with that, and I'll have the time, because especially around now, it gets really busy with doing pitch work for MIP, which is a big event where they pitch television shows in, I believe it's Cannes, France. And so I usually am working on a ton of stuff leading up to that. Just because that's kind of my favorite stuff to do. So I'm usually doing visual development for all these new shows, and it's, I'm really bad at planning. So if I know CTN's coming up, I just I stress, and I'm like, oh, I would have to get a hotel. I'm more of like a on the fly kind of person. And
Yeah.
with those events, they're just too big. Everything gets sold out and I just end up stopping myself from going.
So I'm really curious how you will do it afterwards with the different lifestyle with the sports and just either if it is drawing outside or like collab spaces or just drawing sometimes at home or yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure. A lot of people have mentioned co-op spaces, which
Yeah.
they're pretty hip. They're cool. There's a lot of different people.
Yeah. And you don't have artists there. Usually you have like startups or, so
Yeah.
there are like different types of people for sure. And
Yeah.
what about like, do you have something which simplifies your life, something you bought recently? Maybe a side of, art tools, something like, okay, this is my new thing and it's amazing. Oh, now you froze. Okay. Hello.
Huh. Oh, you're frozen like
Okay.
this.
Now it's frozen again. Okay, good. On a black screen. Good. Now you're back.
Okay. Um, oh my goodness. What did I buy that simplified my life? I don't buy a lot of things, although I'm trying to change that because for the why I'm traveling for a long time and I only had 40 liters of junk on my back and it was so stress free. I never had to worry about cleaning or doing anything. I was just traveling and I had and that was it. And then I came back to my home and I was like, why do I have all this stuff? I don't want this stuff. So actually buying things almost completely. And then so that was about a year ago. And now I'm switching mentality now. And I'm going, wait a second. It actually helps my life. So now I'm allowing myself to kind of just go out and get the thing I need in the moment, whether that's for my kitchen or, I don't even know. I bought a skateboard so that I can get around town. I don't have a car. So I just wanted to be a little faster than walking. So I bought a skateboard.
So good. So that's the skateboard. That's the thing now. And let's talk about the future. And you mentioned already some projects you want to work with or on, and like how do you want to have it? And do you have like a plan in like 5 to 10 years where that would be like your dream scenario?
5 to 10 years, I don't think that far. I never have. I don't even think as far as like the next weekend. I like to be very just free spirited. It's not to say I don't have, like I'm going in a direction, but I don't care what the destination is. And so 5 to 10 years, no real plan. But ideally it would be living on a beach. And I want to have complete autonomous kind of abilities to do whatever inspires me at that moment. And I'm hoping that my next projects, doing some of this YouTube content and speaking to inspiration and passion and all these things, I can't even imagine what that could lead to, but I think it would be really, really good. And that's what excites me. And that's what's driving me right now. So it's totally in the air, but I'll be I'll be putting like good content out there somehow. I just don't know what it looks like.
And what about like really far, far future? Would you know what would you like to be remembered for in like 100 years?
100 years? Oh goodness. I don't think I'll have that much impact on society, but I want people to be inspired, and I want them to look at me as an inspiration, as somebody who didn't necessarily go, the status quo, that I kind of forged some sort of path that inspired somebody along the way. That's really all I can hope for.
Yeah, so there are like a different paths you can like change along the way, so all of that. Perfect. And I'm super happy that you took time to join us here and shared your story and ideas and tips. So it was so much fun.
Thank you. This was lovely. I love talking, and I'm definitely gonna look into your background so I can interview you one day.
That would be cool. So you will have a podcast and YouTube show, and yeah, looking forward to that.
Absolutely, and maybe I'll make it down to CTN.
Yeah, that would be nice. And before we say goodbye, maybe you can share last piece of advice or guidance, and then we will finish the interview.
Yeah. Well, right now, what's driving me is that finished is better than perfect. It's, I saw this from another blogger or YouTuber or whatever, and it hit me so hard because I stopped myself from doing a lot of things because I want to be really good at everything I do. Mm-hmm. But being naive is the best thing you can almost do in terms of creation, because when I came into the industry, I didn't know what I couldn't do or could do, and I the first show I got to actually have a huge impact on, I had a moment be stopped because I was naive. Nobody had told me no yet, and now I'm a bit older. I'm a little jaded because I've been in the industry for a while, and I don't have. And I find that there's an expectation now because I'm established that everything I put out has to be perfect.
Yeah.
And it stops me from putting out anything. I haven't published a book since 2012 because I think it has to be perfect. And when I did it the first time, I just did it because I really wanted something out there, and it wasn't perfect, but people loved it.
Yeah.
And now it's been 5 years and I haven't anything, and people have been asking for it, and finished is better than perfect. Just do work, create as much as you can and put it out there. So that's my advice.
Perfect. And there was a bit of a connection issue, so hopefully it will be all recorded fine and tiny bit frozen. But yeah, but otherwise, thank you so much again. And thanks everyone for joining, and hope to see you in the next interview. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and let me know in comments. Also, please subscribe to my channel for more videos because I post new interview every single workday. You can also find the resources mentioned in this episode at artsideoflife.com. Just type a guest name in the search bar. There is also a little freebie waiting for you, so go check it out. If you want to listen to the interviews on the go, make sure to check out the podcast episodes at artsideoflife.com/podcast. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and don't forget to inspire each other. I will see you guys in the next episode.